Hi, in this video I will tell you about one of the most important features of your MikroTik router, the firewall. This will be a basic video. I'll explain the basic concepts in the firewall and show you how to add rules, where to place them, and just the basics of how it all works. So let's open the Winbox. I have an audience device. It's detected by the Winbox loader, and let me connect. If you haven't done it already, and if it's just the first time connecting to your router, always set a strong password and change the username. Create a new user, not admin, something else, and set a strong password. Then re-log in with your new user and remove the admin account. So if you go into IP Firewall, you will see the firewall window. The first tab is called Filter Rules. This is where all your firewall rules are located. All the home routers that we sell have a default firewall on them. The more advanced professional routers don't have a firewall, but they also don't have any other configuration. So if you got one of those, in addition to configuring the IP address and all the basic routing things, you also will have to configure your own firewall. But in this case, since this is a beginner video, we'll be talking about home routers, and they do have a standard firewall on them. So here you can see there are 11 rules, and let me just quickly tell you what's going on here. There are several types of rules in this list here. What you need to notice is these green checkboxes, check marks are accept rules. Those rules allow something. And then there are these red X's, those are drop rules that deny something. There are all kinds of actions available, but since this is a beginner video, we'll be looking at mostly accept and drop rules. So first thing that you need to know is that the firewall filter rule list is organized in a specific order, and the order is very important. In case you have sorted the list by something else here, by chain, by source address, by destination address, always remember that the rules are processed in the order, and you can see here that the numbers have been rearranged, and you must sort by original order to understand how they are actually processed. So even if you have resorted them just to look at something, always put it back into the original numbered order so that everything is displayed just as it is processed. It will be easier to understand. So next, what you need to know about this window is chain column here. Each rule, when you create it, must be put into a rule category or a group of rules. And the standard groups or chains, as we call them in the MikroTik routers, are forward, input, and output. Well, what do these chains mean? So all the rules that are in the forward chain will look at traffic that goes from somewhere through the router to somewhere else. So for all the traffic that is being forwarded through the router. So this includes when you as a user are browsing the web. So all that traffic from your laptop through the router to the web, and from the web through the router to your laptop, is being processed through the forward chain. So if you want to block something, for example, if you want to block your users from accessing a certain web page, you would put these rules in the forward chain. Another chain is the input chain. This will look at traffic that is going to the router itself. So, for example, if you want to protect your router from attackers on the internet, you would put rules in the input chain. Same goes for traffic that is coming from your LAN. So sometimes you must also protect the device from your local network. As well, no network is completely secure, so you should also control what's going on in your own network. And then there is the output chain, which is not used as often. That's the reason why there are no standard rules, no default rules in the output chain, as that is dealing with traffic that is originating from the router itself. For normal firewalls, mostly we deal with input and forward chains. Then there is the possibility of creating your own groups of rules, your own chains. So when you add a new firewall rule, here in the dropdown you see forward, input, and output, and you can also make your own chains. Any name you can type here. And then you have the option to group large sets of firewall rules together and only call this list of rules for specific type of traffic. But that's a topic for another time. All right, those are the basics. Now let's maybe add some rules. This firewall that we have on my audience device here already protects the device from unwanted connections from the internet, and it's already doing a pretty good job. So maybe let's just go through the rules that we have here. So the first rule is a dummy rule that is for counting fast track connections. So we can ignore it. It's doing nothing. It's not blocking anything. Then we have an accept rule for already established, related, and untracked connections. So this rule will accept all the connections that are related to already accepted connections. So as it says, related connections. So basically, if the firewall allowed a new connection to be made previously, and this is just another one related to that one, this will also be accepted with this rule. Then we have a rule that is dropping invalid connections, all kinds of stuff that is abnormal. Then we accept pings from all networks, so that you can debug your network and ping the device. Then there's a rule for capsman. And this rule will block all the other stuff that is not coming from your local network. So this means that it basically protects your device from the internet side, because it drops everything that is here. You can see the exclamation mark, not from your local network. So these are the input chain rules. Now we get to the forward chain rules for traffic that is forwarded through the router. We allow IPsec. Then we do fast tracking. Fast tracking is a feature that makes the router work a little faster by disabling certain functions that, well, for most home users are not needed. So it will just, like it says in the name, fast track connections without doing additional processing, and so that makes your download speeds faster, basically. For most people it's fine, but as you will see in a little moment, there are situations where we need to disable this rule and sacrifice a little bit of speed to get more functionality. Then also the same as in the input chain, we accept established related connections. Then we also drop all kinds of random invalid stuff, and then we drop everything else. So it means everything that you did not accept before will now be dropped, except connections that are coming from the WAN. WAN means wide area network. So this rule will drop everything except connections that are used for port forwarding. For example, you may have a web server in your local network, and this rule will allow those, but it will drop everything else. So as you see, Firewall is configured in a way that you specify what types of traffic you want to allow, and then once you have listed everything that you want to allow, you add the last rule to drop everything else. This is how the firewall works here, and this is why the order is important. All right, let's add a rule. With this rule, I want to allow access to the router from the internet side, but only for my own IP address let's say, my office address. For example, this is my home router, and I would like to connect to this router from my work computer. And I know my specific IP address of this work computer, and I completely trust this computer. Let me then allow access to this device from that IP address. This is still quite dangerous, and it is not recommended that you open full access to the management interface from anywhere if it's not your own home network. Normally, you would first configure some kind of VPN access, for example, IPsec, to first connect to the VPN service, and only then you're allowed in with the Winbox. But for this example, I will simply show you how to add the rule, and let's not talk about it anymore. So, new firewall rule. In this case, I'm going to allow something to connect to the router itself. So what I need to do is select the chain input. Then we will be allowing the specific port of Winbox in this example. This means we need to specify TCP. The protocol is TCP, and the destination port, we need to allow Winbox. So how to tell what kind of port Winbox is using? We can go to IP services. 8291 is the Winbox port. 8291. There are all kinds of other settings that we can specify here. For example, you can say that this will only apply to traffic coming from the internet, but well, it doesn't matter since we will be specifying a source IP address. So let's say my office address is 150, 140, 130. And well, let's say I trust my colleagues, even though I don't, and I will add all of this network. In not a specific one IP address, but all of this network. Of course, you can just type your specific address, but in this case, I'm going to allow all of the network to into the router here. This is very dangerous, like I said before, but well, this is an example. So we're dealing with traffic coming to the router. This is the source network. This is the TCP protocol destination port. Action, accept. So this will allow the traffic. But what happens is this rule is added at the end. And like I said before, the order of rules is very important. So in the input chain here, you can see that the last of the input rules is dropping everything that is not coming from the LAN. So we need to put this rule before we drop all this traffic. So I need to move it above drop all rule. So only now will it take effect, because all the rules are checked in order. So first it will allow, and then it will drop everything else. So this is why I placed it above the drop all rule. Well, this rule is enough to allow myself from this network into my router, and it's as easy as that. Okay, but for example, there is a certain IP address that I do not want to connect to my router. So let's just open it up, open the previous rule up, and click copy. Now I would like to change something. I will add the new rule that .13, it's a specific user in my network that is not allowed to connect to the router. And I will change the rule to drop. What you can do before adding any kinds of drop rules is enable safe mode. Here's a button called safe mode. Once you click it, it will start monitoring what you are doing on the router. And if you somehow manage to mess up your configuration and lose access to the router with your action, then it will see something happened that got your connection cut, and it will undo the last action. This is a safe mode, so try and use it more often. And now we click OK and close the previous rule. So as you see, the copy button made the rule appear next to the one that I opened. So now they're both here. And since my connection is still active, it means that, well, I didn't mess anything up, and I can just close the safe mode again. Before doing any kind of important configuration changes on a remote device, just click the Safe Mode button to be safe. So this is how you allow and drop traffic. Also remember about the order, remember about the chain, and well, also remember my advice, never to do this. Use VPN and allow only IPsec to your device. Then you can connect and manage your device. VPN is always safer. Even if you trust your network, well, never trust anyone. So that's the first rule of Firewall. All right. A lot of people want to block web pages. How to block web pages? Some of you have, in the comments I have seen, are using layer 7 protocols. Now, this is not for blocking web pages. It is very resource intensive, and it's actually analyzing the content of packets. So this is not possible if we're dealing with encrypted traffic. If you want to block web pages that use HTTPS, HTTPS is what all of the web pages use now. You need to look somewhere else, not inside the page, but in the SSL certificate of that page. So, since now we will deal with something more advanced, we can no longer use fast track. So we will disable this rule. If you want to know what fast track is and how it works, you can check our documentation. There is a whole page about how fast track works, but in this case, just trust me, we need to disable it. Then we need to add a new rule. In this case, it will be in the forward chain. I will be blocking myself from going to the MikroTik web page. First, let's verify that it works. Yeah, the page is opening up. Let me reload the page here. Web page is working. Now I'll go back to Winbox. And here I will just basically I will cut off my access to the MikroTik web page. Let's use in interface list LAN, local area network. So in advanced, we will go and look for TLS host. And in the TLS host, you can enter part of a domain name that you will be looking for. In this case, I'll type asterisk, MikroTik asterisk. So it will look for any kind of domain names that contain the word MikroTik. And these domain names, we are looking at the SSL certificates of web pages. So here you can see the certificate is issued for domains for these domains here. So go back to your firewall rule, and in the advanced tab, go to TLS host and type asterisk MikroTik asterisk, or any other domain you would like to block. So you could type the full domain name if you would like, but I suggest using it this way so that it blocks all kinds of subdomains and variations of that page. Then go to the action, set, drop, and click OK. So here is your new firewall rule, and we will just drag it up before the drop all rule, so that first the traffic is being checked, and it hits the first forward firewall rule. It says, oh, this is a MikroTik web page, and it will drop it, and then only then it will proceed with all the other rules. And as you can see, the page is not loading. So if we go back to our firewall list, you can see packet counters are increasing. It means the rule is working, and the firewall rule is blocking access to the specified web page. If we now disable this rule and go back to the web page and load it again, you'll see that it is working now, and the rule is disabled. The page is now working again. Okay, so this is how you could block a web page. if you wanted to. That's the basic overview of the firewall tab here, of the filter rule tab. So what you need to remember is rules are being processed in order. So always make sure that you have sorted the firewall filter window by the rule number. Then you need to remember that about the chains. Put your rules in the forward chain if you're dealing with traffic from the LAN to the internet and from the internet to your LAN. And put your rules in the input chain if you're dealing with traffic that is going to the router. So those are the basic things to remember. Of course, there's all kinds of settings in the firewall. The firewall can be intimidating, but if you keep to these basics, you'll be making your firewall in no time. Well, as you can see, there's all kinds of interesting options here in the advanced, in the extra, and in the other sections. All right, so to learn more about the firewall, unblock the MikroTik page first, and then go to the support tab here and click on the big red button, the documentation. In the documentation, go to IP, firewall, and filter. Here you can read all about the settings of the firewalls. But what I also recommend is reading the section called Securing Your Router. Securing your router gives you some general advice about how to keep your router safe, even with starting with things like setting up your user, setting up your password, disabling unneeded services. Then there is a subsection about your first firewall. This is similar to this video and it explains some basics. And we have building your advanced firewall with some more details about the firewall rules. All right, I hope that you learned something interesting today, and I hope you find this video useful. Thank you very much for watching.